never imagined I'd have to record my own children to protect my husband's legacy. I didn't think I'd live a day where I'd press record, not out of paranoia, but out of pure heartbreak. But that day, that afternoon, something inside me shattered. And something else, something far stronger, was born. Because when I tell you I counted 21 times, 21 cruel, careless, cutting interruptions, while I read the most important words of my husband's life. I'm not exaggerating. I sat there, holding back tears, clutching the final letter he wrote, his will, his voice from beyond this life, and all I heard around me were sighs, scoffs, whispers, smirks, like I was reading off a grocery list instead of their father's last goodbye. I can't forget it, not just because it hurt, but because in those 21 moments, I saw what I hadn't dared to see before, the truth. The truth about who they'd become. And I don't say this out of hatred.
God, no.
I say it out of heartbreak. Because I gave my life to those children. Every second, every breath, every bit of energy I had, I poured into raising them, shaping them, sacrificing for them. I was the woman who stayed up all night during fevers, clapped the loudest at school plays, put off my own dreams just so theirs could live. And somewhere along the way, entitlement replaced gratitude. Greed replaced love. And when I looked up that day and saw the bored, impatient looks on their faces, as I sat reading their father's will, I realized I wasn't looking at grief. I was looking at anticipation. They weren't mourning. They were waiting to collect. And when I opened that folder, the air in that room changed. It thickened like tension you could chew. The silence wasn't reverent, it was strategic. Like a theater full of actors who already knew the ending. Only this play didn't include me. The first interruption was small. A cough. Just a restless shift in a chair. But the second was louder. My son asking, "How long is this going to take?" And by the fifth, I wasn't just hurt, I was counting.
1, 2, 3.
Holding on to the rhythm like it was the last thread keeping me sane. And by the 10th, I could barely breathe. Not from grief, but from shame. Not shame in me, shame in them. Because they weren't just interrupting me, they were stomping on his memory. Their father, the man who carried them on his shoulders, paid for their education, loved them through their worst. The man they were now trying to rush to the finish line, like his death was a transaction. So I did something I never thought I'd do. I pressed record. Quietly. Secretly. I wasn't trying to expose them. Not at first. I just needed proof, to remind myself later that I wasn't overreacting. That the pain I was feeling, it was real. Tangible.
Documented.
So I read on. And as the tape rolled silently in my purse, I poured out his final words, line by line, his wishes, his heart, his legacy. And I watched them. Their eyes glazed over when I mentioned the scholarship fund he wanted to start. Their lips tightened at the mention of charity donations. And when it became clear that this wasn't the payout they expected, the interruptions became nastier. Sarcastic snorts. Whispered jokes. My daughter even chuckled when I said his ashes were to be spread near the lake where he proposed to me, like it was sentimental nonsense instead of sacred memory. And by the end, I had counted 21 interruptions. Not just verbal, emotional, intentional. Every one of them chipped away at my belief that these were the children I once knew. And then came the real silence. Because right on cue, the lawyer walked in. And in his hands, an envelope. Thick. Sealed. Heavy. It had been prepared by my husband months before he died. Open only if the will reading is dishonored, the label said. My hands shook. I knew what was inside. My husband had prepared for this. He knew. Somewhere deep in his soul, he knew what I was only just discovering. That the people we raise aren't always the people we remember. That sometimes, grief reveals more truth than love ever did. So I opened it. And inside a single USB stick. A recording. Not of me. Of them. I hit play. Their voices filled the room.
Loud. Cold.
Disrespectful. You could hear me trembling, trying to read. You could hear my son joke about how long it would take. My daughter snickering about charity. And you could hear every pause, every breath I took to keep myself from crying. It was ugly. It was real. And it was undeniable. The room went silent. You could hear the air leave their lungs like the truth had punched them. My daughter looked stunned. My son went red. And then the lawyer, calmly, like he'd done this before, said, "As per Mr. Whitaker's request, only those who honored this reading with grace shall inherit." And what followed was chaos. Raised voices. Accusations. "You manipulated this," my son screamed. "This isn't fair," my daughter sobbed.
But I didn't yell.
I didn't scream. I didn't even flinch. I just looked at them, really looked, and what I saw were strangers wearing my children's faces. So I stood. I walked out. I left them there, in the echo of their own cruelty, in the silence they had created. And for the first time in years, I didn't feel small. I didn't feel broken. I felt seen. My husband had given me many things in life, but in death, he gave me truth. And in that truth, I found peace. But that's not where the story ends. 2 days later, my doorbell rang. I almost didn't answer it, but something in me told me to open it. And there she was, my daughter. No makeup, mascara streaked, puffy eyes. In her hands, a photo album from when she was little. She didn't say sorry. Not right away. She said, "Mom." I listened to the recording again, and I didn't like the person I heard. I didn't hug her. Not at first. I just stood there, trying to breathe through the pain. But in that moment, something opened. Not forgiveness, not yet, but the beginning of it. The beginning of seeing her not as the child I raised, but as the adult she had chosen to become. The beginning of a new kind of love, one that isn't blind, but conscious. Conditional not on perfection, but on accountability. You see, the hardest part of being a parent isn't the sleepless nights. It's not the sacrifices. It's not even the letting go. It's realizing that the people you raised, the ones you loved beyond reason, may grow into people who can hurt you deeply and still choosing to love them anyway. But love doesn't mean silence. Love doesn't mean shrinking. Love doesn't mean tolerating disrespect in the name of peace. Sometimes, love means pressing record. Sometimes, love means walking away. And sometimes, love means leaving the door open just a little so they can find their way back if they choose to. And if you're still listening, still watching, still breathing in this story, maybe you've felt this too. That ache. That hollowness. That moment when your voice was drowned out by people who should have protected it. Maybe you've been in that room, reading your heart out, while someone rolled their eyes. Maybe you've smiled through tears, nodded through betrayal, held your tongue when you should have screamed. And if you have, I see you. Because your pain isn't invisible. Your dignity isn't disposable.
And you?
You don't need to shrink just to make others comfortable. Even if the people closest to you forget how to listen. And if you've ever had to stay strong in a room that treated you like you were weak, I want you to do one thing right now. Hit subscribe.